only had only had conjugal relations with only one man.
Okay, well, that
That's
may
what I really meant.
probably the majority of women, that's true.
Oh,
But a healthy minority of women,
I
that's
guess.
why we have all these Gemaras. Was it before she was in a Arusa? Was it after she was? Because things happen. Trick is to cry out.
The implication is that you may be right that through Jewish history, there was a model of monogamy. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean, but it wasn't halakhically required, first of all, till the time of
Gershon.
Rabbeinu Gershon for the Ashkenazic community. Okay, and it wasn't true to the Sephardic. No, Sephardic they did.
No, Sephardic still have multiple spouses.
Not too much. No.
If you're affluent enough, and to the extent,
Not
and if you
not
move,
under the
if
halacha
you
in
move
Israel.
from Morocco to Israel with, say, 3 wives, Israeli law, you're allowed to keep them.
I don't,
That
well,
is true.
Even in those countries, they don't have it.
okay,
It's not normal, but it's happened. It's
Very rare.
because most people are not rich enough or have the kayak to cope with 3 wives or the patience.
Or the Maya.
I don't know. Learning sponsors, Shelman.
That's right. Remember, the more wives you have, the more figures you have.
Learning sponsors. Year of Learning, Friends of Noinem Monester, Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdil, Lezecha Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz, in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha Bas Rivka. Isaac and Evelyn Blachman, in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. A month of learning, Gary and Marsha Schrager, in memory of his father, David Ben Yosef, and his mother, Freda Bat Hendel. Marsha Federbush, in memory of her husband, Oyel Pinchas Ben Arav Shimon. Andrea and David Dolmy, in memory of her father, Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Avraham. Del Budlander, in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother, Bela Devasha Bas Harav Dov Beresh, his father-in-law, Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law, Alta Chaya Bas Avram Yosef. A week of learning by Michael and Judy Poretsky, in memory of his father, Gershon Ben Chaim Tzvi, by Judy Iger, in memory of her son, Yerachmel Ben Aharon. Now, today is actually the 5th of September, right? There are no days of learning marked for today. However, again, we still continue before Shlem for Peret Semach Ben Yaakov Yitzchak and Moshe Rub Ben Sima Tebel, as well as others that we say Misha Bergspor, and then Menashama have an Aliyah, Frank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shem Latzliah, Lachol B'nai Yisrael, good gebench.
Amen.
Okay.
Now we know the reason for male pattern baldness.
Well, I don't know if I would give that the reason. Yes, I see what the Gemara says. Gemara also says something about eating celery too.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. We are going to be on Samach Bet Amud Beis. Right. I mean Samach Amud Beis. Towards the very bottom, it's probably an art scroll B4, B3, B4.
B3.
Okay. It's 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Okay. All right. Samach Amud Beis. Right. It's okay. In this Gemara, as we're going to move along, okay, again, we're dealing with a number of situations and scenarios. Okay. All right. Okay, so the Gemara, we've been talking about various clarification of situations in terms of marriage. Okay, and then we talked about giving birth, right? And now we're still dealing with combinations of those issues. Okay, so as I said, Samach Beis. Okay,
Doesn't say anything about ice cream and pickles.
maybe that wasn't as available then. Okay, all right. So the Gemara starts off. Marty, okay there? Yeah. Okay. The Mishamsha Bei Recha, that if they have relations in or near a mill, right? Havula Banei Nachve. She would then have children that are epileptic. Okay. The Mishamsha Al Ara, if they have relations on the ground, okay, Havula Banei Shamute. Then she would have long-necked children. The Darcha Al Rama de Chamra, if she steps or stomps on the excrement of a donkey, right? Havula B'nei Girdane, then they would have bald-headed children. Okay.
That's right.
The Achla Chardala, if she ate mustard. Okay. Havula B'nei Zalzulani, she would then have gluttonous children. The Achla Tachle, if she eats cress. Havula B'nei Dulpane, she would have weepy-eyed children. The Achla Monine, okay, that if she's eating small fish, right? Havula B'nei Metzitze Ene, then she would have children with blinking eyes. The Achla Gargushta, if she eats some sort of soil or clay, okay, depending on the translation of the word there. Havula B'nei Michoare, she would have ugly children. The Shtia Shikra, okay, if she's drinking beer in this case, okay. Havula B'nei Ochme, she would have children of a darker complexion. The Achla Bisra V'Shtia Chamra, and if she eats meat and drinks wine. Havula, as we go over to the next Amud, B'nei Bariye, she would have healthy children. Okay. The Achla Beye, if she eats eggs. Havula B'nei Inine, she would have children with large eyes. The Achla Kavre, if she's eating, in this case, a fish of some kind. Okay. Havula B'nei Chinane, she'd have graceful children. Okay. The Achla Karpasa, if she's eating coriander, okay, which is a spice. Havula B'nei Ziyutane, she would have beautiful children. The Achla Kusbarta, okay, here this is celery. That's coriander. Karpasa is celery, right? Like karpas. Before that was celery, right? Okay, so they eat coriander. Havula B'nei Bishrane. Bishrane, she would have, one translation was corpulent, okay, another was heavy, okay, all right. Da'achla Etroga, if she eats etrog. Havula B'nei Rachane, she would have sweet-smelling children. And the Gemara then continues, okay, Barte de Shavur Malka, the daughter of King Shavur, okay, Achla Ba'ima, her mother used to eat etroga, right? And because of that, the child was, I guess, sweet-smelling. Vahavu maske la lakame avuha baresh rechane. And they used to place her in front of her father, okay, because of her pleasant odor. Okay. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, as we get to a a new piece, right? Badak lan Rav Huna bar Chinana. Okay, he says that the Rav Huna bar Chinana used to give us exams. Okay, what happened? What example? He omeret lahanik, v'hu omer shelo lahanik. She says she's willing to nurse, but now we're back more to our earlier topic, and he says she does not have to nurse.
He doesn't want it.
Okay, or he doesn't want her to. Okay, variety of possible explanations there. Shom'im la, we listen to her. All right, why? Sara didahu, because it's her, I don't want to call it suffering per se, but it affects her body.
It's painful if you
Okay.
can't, if the milk builds
Right.
up.
All right, and that's the case. All right. All right. Hu omer lahanik, he says she needs to nurse the child. Vehi omeret shelo lahanik. Mahu. And she says she's not prepared to nurse the child. What's the situation there? Kol hecha delav orcha. So we say where it's not their normal custom or pattern, shomim la, we listen to her. He orcha v'hu lav orche. If she says that it's her custom to nurse, and he says it's not his custom for women in his family to nurse, Mai, what's the situation? Batar didei azlinen or batar dida azlinen? Do we follow after her or do we follow after him? Pashit nale meha. It was explained to him as follows from this, namely, Ula imo ve'ena yoredet imo. We say in this case that she goes up in her social status and she doesn't descend in her social status. Well, I don't know if I would use exactly that same parallel. Okay, but that's the implication. In other words, if his family is not accustomed to nurse, then she is not required to do
Now, how
so.
does this impact the earlier Gemara, where it says she's obligated to nurse, and if the baby won't go to someone else, she still must?
Let's see if the Gemara gives a direct answer. It's a good shaila. Okay, all right. I think the Gemara may come up with a possible approach. Okay. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Maikra, what's the pasuk we base it on? Vehi bu'ulat ba'al. Okay, that pasuk from Bereshit, right? Namely, ba'aliyato shel ba'al, velo b'yiridato shel ba'al.
Instead of saying Eshizich, it says wow.
All right, so in other words, the one with whom she is the one with whom she is married, I'm going to use it that phrase, as opposed to simply be'ila, okay? Namely, that is, and that goes up with his status and not descend with his status. Rabbi Elazar Amar Mehach, and Rabbi Elazar says that concept of upgrading social status and not degrading comes from a different pasuk. Ki hi haita aim kol chai, because she was the mother of all life. The chayim nitna velo litzar nitna, right? For the benefit of life, it was given, and not for any suffering was it given. Okay, so that was again the possibility. The implication at this point, at least to me, was that therefore, if the family, as we saw with the example of the Reish Galuta earlier in the Gemara, that they were able to have servants and pay for a wet nurse, that would be the implication, and therefore, yes, but I'm saying, and then therefore, she would not be forced to nurse the child. Okay? All right? So that's why I said it's possible that the Gemara is giving us a maskana there.
So you would have to just say that because she has the redness from the get-go, that the baby never really becomes
Accustomed to her, would not recognize her, right? Okay. All right. You could bring that back, by the way, interestingly enough, to the story of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and and the arrangement.
where he refuses.
But there, remember
There he
what we
refuses anybody but the natural mother, and
right
he's
because she was also his
old.
nurse. Right.
But he
Okay.
was Moshe Rabbeinu.
I'm not sure if that makes him a unique
Well,
baby.
no, I mean the Medrash there says because he knows he's going to grow up to be Moshe Rabbeinu, and he doesn't want to eat non-kosher.
That's midrash. That's still midrash.
I understand, but
Okay.
Medrash is meaningful.
In contexts. Okay. Hachnisa lo shifcha. So now we're getting to the point where our Mishnah, remember, said if she brings in one servant, two servants, three servants, four servants, it then reduces the amount of work that she is expected to do in the household. Okay. And that's what the Gemara is going to pick up on as we continue. Okay. So what happens? Sha'ara avda. It would seem to imply from this that the rest of the work, okay, she would have to do. The remainder other items that are listed, that's what she has to do. V'temale, but right, she could say to him the following: Ailit lach itita v'charikai. She says, she can tell her husband, I have brought in another woman, okay, in my place to do this. So
She
this
should
work.
do it all.
Okay. Mishum da amar la. Why? But he could then come back and say to her, Ha tircha ladidi uladida. That maid, let's call her for the moment, a maid servant, her work is for me and for herself. Kame didach man tarach. But as for you, who's going to do your work? Okay. Now the Gemara continues. Shtayim eina mevashelet ve'eina manika v'chulei. We say with two servants, she doesn't do the cooking or nurse the child. Hashara avda. Therefore, the others, yes, she has to do. V'temale. And she could say to him, Ailit lach itita achariti. I've brought in another woman, another maid to work. Detarcha ladidi uladida. Okay. And she works, and he could say, she works for me and works for her. V'chada ladidach ladida. And one works for you and for her. Okay. Mishum da amarla. But then it's possible for him to say to her, Kami orche uparche man tarach. Can we have guests and wayfarers, travelers? Who's going to do the work for them? All right. Again, shalosh eina matzat hamita. With three servant girls or three servants, one doesn't have to make the beds. Hasha'ara avda. But for the other work, she needs to do it. V'tema. And you could tema lay, and she could say to him, I lead lach acharite leorche uparche. Okay, mishum. All right, I have brought in a third girl working. Okay, in other words, to take care of the travelers and the wayfarers, the guests and the wayfarers. Right, the amarla. Right, he could say to her, however, nafish b'nei beta, the more people there are in the household, nafish orche uparche, the greater the number of guests and travelers, wayfarers. Okay, which, just the quick aside, in other words, that the idea of welcoming guests is an important mitzvah here in this discussion. Okay, ihachi. Afilu arbanami. If that's the case, even if there are four servants also. Arba kevandam nafishe laho. If there are four, since there are many of them to do the work, misayin hadade. They can help one another. So doesn't that imply why our Mishnah said that she could just sit in the okay and right, whatever that. Well, we'll see. Amar Rabbi Chana, says Rav Chana, v'itema Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, and others say Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani the following: Lo hichnisa lo mamash ela kevan shera'uha lihachnis. It's not that she actually brought in 4 servant girls, but rather we're saying that maybe her dowry, I'm going to explain it this way, is large enough to acquire 4 maid servants. Afal pi shelo hichnisa, even though she did not actually bring them in with her on the occasion of the marriage. Okay? Tana. And now we have a brighter. Achar shechnisa, okay, echad shechnisa lo, ve'echad shetzamtzam'at lo mishala. The same applies whether she actually brought them in with her or whether she simply reduced, okay, the tasks that were,
Saved up her allowance.
okay, well, that could be one explanation, but somehow she reduced the
She was
tasks
something
that-
until she had enough
that
money.
she could reduce from the tasks. Okay. Arba Yoshevet Bekatedra, said our Mishnah. If there were 4 servants, she could sit in a chair and direct them. You do this, you do that, so on, and supervise.
Super.
Okay? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Chanina, he says, Amar Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Huna, Afal Pisha Amru Yoshevet Bekatedra, even though we say she sits in the chair, Aval Mozeget Lokos, nevertheless, she should still pour his wine and mix his water and wine together, Umatzad Lo et Hamita, and prepare his bed, Umerachetzet Lo Panav Yadav Raglav, and wash his face, hands, and legs. Right? Why? We'll see. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Chinana. He says, Amar Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Huna. Kol melachot sha'isha oseh leba'ala, all those tasks, I'll put it that way, that a woman does for her husband, nida oseh leba'ala, a woman who is in nida may do for her husband, chutz mimzigat hakos, with the exception of mixing his wine and water. Why? Or vahatzat hamita, or preparing the bed. Vaharchatzat panav yadav v'raglav. Okay, or washing his hands, face, and right. These are all considered signs of intimacy. Okay. As we go on, vahatzat hamita, and in regarding making the bed or preparing the bed, Amar Rava.
The first making the bed is actually physically setting it up. Here it's just sort of what we call making a bed, smoothing out the sheets.
You got that from where?
Let's go and right.
Okay. All right.
Because we had the
No, I'm not challenging. I just want to know because Corin did not present
well,
it
the
that
point
way.
is that there are 2 different terms used for making beds, and one of them the servant does, and one she has to do.
Okay. All right. So if that's what Rashi and Arts will suggest, fine. That's why I asked. Corin did not present it in that way whatsoever.
So
Okay.
how did they handle the stira?
They didn't.
They just ignored it.
They didn't present it as a steer. Okay.
You don't see.
No.
Go back to it.
Okay. Amar Rava, says Rava, lo amran ela b'fanav. But we said this only in regards to in front of him, in his presence. Aval shalo b'fanav lit lan ba. But if it's not in his presence, there's no issue to it. Okay, let's go on. Umazigat hakos, and in regarding pouring or mixing the wine and water together. Shmuel Chalfa. Okay, we're going to take now some examples of how certain wives handle that situation, okay, when they were in a nida status. Okay, so regarding Mizigat Hakos, the wife of Shmuel stood Mechalfa le de Batayu biyada de Smola. Okay, instead, the wife of Shmuel mixed it with using her left hand instead of her right hand.
Doesn't she make it tamei then? If she's in neither,
She doesn't touch the wine.
Okay.
or even the coat, she touches, she's allowed to touch hands.
No,
with the
if
coat?
I'll give an example. Okay, briefly. Let's assume that she is pouring it from a pitcher, and the pitcher is made out of earthenware. The earthenware pitcher is not makabel tuma, and therefore there's no connection to the wine. Okay, Zev?
You're assuming she doesn't handle the coast at all.
Yeah, as long as she doesn't touch the wine itself.
Right. Okay, another example. Abaye, in regards to Abaye, what had happened there? What does his wife do? Manchale apuma dekova. She put it down on the top of a barrel. Okay, Rava, in terms of his wife. Okay, Abe Sadya, she put it on his pillow. Okay, the next Rav Papa, what did they do? Ashar Shaifa, she put it on a bench next to him. Okay, Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Chananya, Amar Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Huna, Hakol Mash'in B'fnei Hashemesh. Okay, that Shamash. Okay, that the others say the following in a slightly different topic now. Okay, when the food stuffs is presented in front of the waiter, I'm going to translate Shamash as waiter, Chutz mi basar v'yayin, with the exception of meat and wine. These two items, meat and wine, are significant because they have strong aromas.
And you have to let the
Okay,
serving happen.
well, we're going to get to that in just a second. Amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda, Basar Shemen v'yayin yashan. He says we're particularly talking about fatty meat and old wine. Amar Rava, says Rava, Basar Shemen kol hashana kula. Okay, Basar Shemen, we're talking about fatty meat throughout the year whenever it's served. Yayin Yashan, but Kufat Tammuz, and old wine, particularly in the time of Tammuz, which is the summer months, because the heat makes the aroma more pervasive. So the implication of all of this, as we're going to see and continue, is that normally the issue is because of that aroma, it's going to cause the waiter himself to be hungry or thirsty. Okay, and do you serve him, let him eat first before he serves the food, or do you let him eat afterwards? The impression I got, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that usually one of the other Talmidim, okay, or one of the other servant, okay, in other words, there wasn't a quote professional waiter as we think of in a restaurant. It was one of the
household people.
One of the household people, well, could be one of the servants, okay, but it could be one of the other students together, okay? So it was somebody's turn to act as the server that day, okay? The same way you sometimes see in camp, or you sometimes see in yeshivas.
The same thing that is
okay, okay, somewhat.
Where when it comes to the ritual foods, the mitzvah foods, the waiter is entitled to participate with the table that is served.
Okay, but that was a common situation in camps, that some Jewish summer camps or in certain yeshivas, that the kids took turn being the servers that day.
Summer camp, they con some kid into doing it for free because he's going to get tips.
No, not necessary. Depends on what camp you went to. Okay. Okay, well, not at least when I worked in camps.
No, today.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're seeing in this case.
That's not nice.
Okay, we're seeing in this case some other examples now. All right. So what happens? Amar Rav Anan, right? So what happens? Amar Rava, we said, Yayin Yashem Tkvat Tammuz. Amar Rav Anan, he says, Bar Tachlifa. All right, he tells us the following. Hava ka'amina kame demar Shmuel. He says, I was once standing in front of Shmuel. Va'aitu le tavshile da'arde. And what did they do? They brought him something to eat, right?
Arde are mushrooms.
Okay, yeah, I just lost my place for a second. Right, they brought him some mushrooms. Ve'ilav de yahavli. Okay, and if he hadn't given me some, istakane, I would have been in danger. Okay, let's see, he says, Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, Hava Kamina Kame de Rav Kahana. I was once standing before Rav Kahana. Va'aitule Gargilide Delifta Bachla. They brought him some slices of turnip dipped in vinegar. Ve'ilav the Yahivle, and if he hadn't given it to me, Istakane, I would have been, I'm dying from hunger kind of attitude. All right, the kind of thing. Rav Papa Amar.
Boldness is a special halakha.
What?
In the Gemara in Yuma by a tanis, if someone gets sick, like for fullness, he's looking to eat.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
this is not.
Yeah, but this.
I understand, but it's not talking about a
Right.
kindness. It's
Yes.
talking about.
But I'm giving an example.
Right.
Of boldness in halakha.
Right. Rav Papa Amar. Afilu tamarta dehanunita. Okay. Even if where you had fragrant dates. Okay. Klala demilta. And what is the general principle here? Kol de idle recha ve'idle kiyuta. Anything that has a strong odor or that it has a sharp taste. Okay. Right, that should be that
To let the
indicates
waiter
that the waiter
participate
should participate
during the
and eat, okay, as well. Now we're going to go on here with an interesting point here. If we've said that you allow what?
Article seems to be switching here. The earlier sentence of the turnip and mushroom is something somebody wanted to do. And here it's saying that the farmer person.
I'm not aware of that.
Well,
Okay.
that.
Ted's question is, does the issue of the turnip indicate that it could be harmful?
No. The turnip has an odor or a
Strong taste, right.
So you're basically you're not allowed to deprive the waiter of taking from the serving platter.
Well,
if the food is especially attractive. So
okay.
that
Well, let's see.
making him
The
wait
Gemara's.
would be wrong.
Well, let's see. The Gemara is going to touch on that subject momentarily. Okay. At this point, all we know is that if the food is pungent with odor or taste, you cannot prevent the waiter from eating with that food. Okay, that's all I know so far. Now we're going. Okay, right. Now the Gemara is going to get to another example. Okay, with another point.
Wouldn't that be similar to you're not allowed to muzzle an animal? If he's working
Exactly.
for you?
It could be an example, right?
Exactly.
Could be. Okay, what happens? Gemara picks up and tells us, Avuha bar Ihi, that's one fellow's name, Avuha the son of Ihi, who Minyamin bar Ihi, the Ihi brothers, right? All right, what happened? Okay, Chad safe mikol mine umine, one provided the waiter from any kind of food. Whatever was on this, let's say the big plate, the serving platter, let's put it that way. All right. V'chad safe michad mina, and one provided him with only a single item. Okay. What happens? Mar mishtai Eliyahu bahade, with one master, in other words, whoever provided him from anything, he was able to converse with Elijah. Umar, or at least heard Elijah converse with him. Umar, lo mishtai Eliyahu bahade. And the other, okay, Eliyahu did not converse with him. Okay, now we get another story. Hinu tartin chasidi. They were these two righteous men. Va'amrela, and some say they were Rav Miri, V'Rav Pinchas b'nei Rav Chista, that the two of them were the two sons of Rav Chista. Mar kadim svei, umar ma'achart svei. One provided the waiter with the food at the outset of the meal. I'm going to put it that way. When he first started serving, one had the waiter eat it after, at the end of the meal, after he had served the guests first. The kadim svei, the one who allowed the waiter to take at the outset, Eliyahu Mishtai Bahade. Eliyahu conversed with him. Okay, Dema'achar Sfei, the one who allowed the waiter to take afterwards, Lo Mishtai Eliyahu Bahade. Eliyahu did not converse with him. Another example. Ememar Umar Zutra Rav Ashi, the three of them. Havuka Yadve Apitcha Debe Azgor Malka. They were sitting at the doorway of King Asgor. Okay, just a quick historical reference here. Asgor, the king, that particular king, apparently was well thought of because he was fairly benevolent to the to other minorities throughout the empire, among which was the Jewish community. And there was even the possibility here that because of that, Jewish leaders often met in conference from various locations in the capital city. Okay, and that's why the Gemara, the Koran at least suggested that these three particular sages were meeting at that location. Okay, anyway, Khalif Va'azil Aturnaga de Malka, and there passed by the three of them, the chief butler of the king. What happens? Chazie Rav Ashi Lamar Zutra, and Rav Ashi looked at Mar Zutra. What happened? Dechavar ape, that he was turning pale. Okay, okay. What did he do? Shakal be'etz ba'ate. He took with his fingers something from the tray that the chief butler was carrying. Anach le bepume, and he put it into the mouth, okay, of Mar Zutra. Okay, gives the impression, by the way, that Mar Zutra was the senior, at least elder in age of them. Okay, Amarle, all right, and they said to the waiters, so to speak, said to Rav Ashi, if sadat lesuudata de malka, you've ruined basically the meal for the king. Amrule, and he said to him, Amai ta'aved hachi, why did you do that? Amar lahu, and he said to them, Man da'avid hachi, pasil ma'achal demakra. One who does that kind of thing, okay, ruins the meal of the king. Amrule, he said to them, Amai, on what basis? Amar lahu, davar acher chazai be. I saw something else, namely the translation I had with some leprous infection on the meat, okay, mold or something.
So the meat was no good.
Okay, right? Badku velo eshkachu. They checked and they did not find it. Shakal etzbaate anach ale amarlahu. He reached out with his fingers and pointed on it. In other words, on a particular part of the meat. Okay, and said to them, Hacha mi badkitu. Did you look and examine this section of the meat? That's why I'm guessing it's more meat. Badku ishkachu. They searched, they examined, and they found that there was leprous mold, whatever, something, okay? Amrule, and they said to Rabbanan, the rabbi said to him, my tama samach anisa.
No, now his companion.
Right, he's right. They said to him, right? The rabbis, his buddies there. Okay, why, on what basis did you suddenly rely on a miracle? Right? Amar laho, he said to them, Chazai ruach tzaraat de kaparcha iluyai. I saw something.
No, I wasn't relying on a miracle.
Okay, I saw that there was something wrong there with that piece of meat. Okay. Okay, let's go on. We now get to a new piece in the Gemara where we're dealing a little bit more with some other examples of hunger, all right? In this case, we'll go as far as we can. I know we're running a bit late this morning. Hahu Roma'a, there was a certain Roman man, the Amarla Lahahi Itata, and he said to the following woman, Min Sabatli, marry me. Amrale, she said to him, Lo, no. Azil Aite Rimane. He went and brought pomegranates. Pale, he peeled it. Va'achal kama, and ate it before her. Kol maya ditzara la balate. Okay, any of the, I'm going to use the word here instead of water, saliva that was in her mouth because of the seeing the juicy pomegranates, okay, that he was eating, she swallowed the saliva. Velo havla, and he did not give her. Ad zagla, until, okay, she began to feel ill and bloated. Lesof amarla. At that point, ultimately, he said, I masina lach min sabatle. If I cure you, will you marry me? Amrale, she said to him, and yes. Azil aite rimane. Okay, I'll go and I will bring pomegranates. Pale, peeled it. Va'achal kama, and he ate before her. Amar la, and he said to her, Kol maya detzare lach, any saliva that's bothering you, that's right. Tof shadai, spit it out. Tof shadai, spit it out. Ad nafka mina kihutza yarka v'it sa'it, until it was such that actually a green leaf almost came out from her mouth. All right, and she became healed. All right. Va'oseh b'tzama. Now we're back to our earlier topic.
That's a very strange story.
Yeah. Okay. What happens? We said that she still had to, even if she could sit in the cathedra, she still has to do some sort of work, okay, lest she go crazy. All right. She still had to do weaving. Right. 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 Okay. So what happens? Well, if it's turning thread into wool, okay, they do it on a loom. Okay. All right. So what happens?
Tend to your knitting.
Okay. Vitz bitsama. If we're saying we're talking about wool, yes, and bepishtin, if we're talking about flax, lo, no. Matnitin mani. Our Mishnah then is according to whom? Rabbi Yehuda. It's according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya is taught elsewhere in a Braita. Eino kofeh lo la'amod lifnei aviv. We do not force her to stand before her father, before his father. V'lo la'amod lifnei bano, and not to stand before his son. V'lo litain teven lifnei behemto, and not to place straw before his animal. Aval kofeh litain teven lifnei bekaro. But we do force, okay, in order to give straw to his cattle. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, af eino kofeh la'asot b'pishtan. Indeed, not only don't we force her to do work with flax, mepnei shepishtan masriach et hapeh. Why? Because the flax causes a foul smell, okay, to her mouth, all right? Umisharvet et hasfatayim, and it stiffens her lips, right? Vahani mili bekitna, okay, Roma, and this is when we're talking particularly about Roman flax. Okay, okay, now we're on the wide page. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, afilu hechnisa lo meyash fachot. Even if she brought in 100 servants, Rabbi Eliezer said she still had to do some work. Amar Rav Malchio, says Rav Malchio, Amar Rav Adabar Ahava, in the name of Rav Adabar Ahava. Halacha ka Rabbi Eliezer, law is like Rabbi Eliezer. Amar Rabbi Chanina Berei de Rav Ika, what did he say? The following, Shipud, Shfachot, V'gomot, when we're talking about a skewer with a small piece of meat on it, it could still be moved on a holiday. Shfachot, when we're talking about servants. V'gumot, and we're talking about hair follicles of a young woman, okay? Rav Malchio, all of those are based on statements by Rav Malchio, okay? Blorit, when we're talking about the hair forelock of a Gentile. Afar Makle, where we're talking about putting ashes on a wound that makes it appear like a tattoo. Ugvina, or we're talking about the cheese of a Gentile. Rav Malchia, those are halachas stated by Rav Malchia. So Gemara went on. Rav Papa Amar Matnitin Umatnita Rav Malchia. He claimed that our Mishnah and our learning was from Rav Malchia. Shamatata Rav Malchio. But let's say Braita or Amora statements that is Rav Malchio. The Simanach. And what's the mnemonic device? Matnita Malkata. Okay, they're using that parallel. My Benaihu, what's the difference between them? Okay, right? Ika Benaihu Shvachot. The difference between them is the discussion on the female servants. Okay, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he says, Hainu Tanakama. Well, then that's the same as the earlier Tana said. Ika Benaihu Demit Lala Begiriaita Kit Naita. We're talking here again, Vanid Rashera. Okay, we're talking here about where's my notes? Okay.
The woman who plays with
Okay. Oh, right. So what are we talking about there? It's in the wrong side of the page. The Mitlata Beguriata Kitnaita. She's playing with small pet dogs, Vinidra Shaya, or she plays games. Okay. And I think, gentlemen, we'll stop given the time. All right, everybody? We'll stop at that Mishnah right there. Okay.
Okay. So you can be
She
a
plays
vampire,
mahjong.
and your
Okay.
woman can- your wife can play chess. Or mahjong, right? I have a whole new lifestyle. I'm gonna be vampire. My wife is gonna play mahjong.